Welcome to lecture 27, which is C2MM. So in the last lecture, we started adding the 2MM groups, basically mirror planes, high symmetry mirror planes to rectangular lattices. And we had mentioned that we're going to start to offset it. But before we do that, let's kind of do an example which shows us how mirror planes that are mirror glide planes that are offset may be related to each other, and C2MM is a good example of that. So let's start with our C2 lattice, basically. And remember, what's different about the centered lattice is that the middle element is not just a symmetry element. Remember how, like in the P2, we could have this one, this one, this one, and this one being unique. Remember that in the case of a C2, this element is like that element. And so I'll draw that in with a motif just to remind you. So if I just had a centered lattice with a twofold this would be oh, I made a mistake with ignore these. This would be the case for a C2, a centered lattice with twofold objects, right? And you can see how everything's consistent, and this rotates around that, this rotates around to that one, etc. Now, when I want to put mirror planes in, like we did, let's imagine putting in the one in this case here, which also means I have one here, that automatically then induces this. Which automatically induces this. And in this particular case, because we have this centered piece, then these guys have to be consistent with the element up here, and we end up with these guys, which means that in this case we also have mirror symmetry there, and we also have this one right there. So our centered lattice looks a lot like the P2MM, except now we have an element here. And you'll notice something, that if I look at this element, I could bring it over here in reflection and then translate it down. And that would be this one right here. And of course the same for this one, which brought down here, and then vice versa down to here. So what we realize is we have glide paths here, and here. And of course we can kind of know that because remember we had talked about before how if we have parallel planes, we're going to tend to have a glide plane in between the two, right? So one of the interesting things then is, well, if I had this, clearly I have an offset glide plane inserted here. How could I tell that other types of mirror planes may arise and be part of that? That is, it's pretty simple to say, well, I could have inserted this first and arrived at some different ones, we'll see, but also I could have arrived at this one if I knew what the relationships are between offsetted planes and these rotations, because right now the big mystery is if I offset a plane here and I've got this rotation, what does it mean, for whether I have to have mirror planes around. So we want to start thinking about that case. So this is C2MM, but we want to have, and remember these are mirror planes, I just didn't label them. And we'd like to understand, certainly you can see here that I have symmetry, that is that they fit into a rectangular lattice. And so what is the general relationship if I have a rotation and it's offset from a mirror plane or glide plane? What does it tell me about other mirror planes and glides that can be around? We will discuss that in the next lecture. We'll derive a new theorem for that.